Welcome and thank you for listening on the third episode of the Dynamic Chiropractic Podcast. Today, I have a doc from across the pond, Dr. Vic Manzo. Welcome. Thank you for taking your time today for being on a podcast. It is an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thanks for having me, brother. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, it's awesome. So actually, one of the main reasons why I got in contact with you was one, because I actually listened to your podcast on what is a subluxation, and I loved it. I thought it was great. I think it sent out the right message. But obviously, before we dive a lot deeper into that, do you mind just telling us how you personally got into chiropractic? What is your story?
Love that. And we all have a story, right? It's a beautiful thing about, for the most part, at least, chiropractors have a story, right?
Absolutely.
I never wanted to be a chiropractor. I mean, not that I didn't want to. I didn't know what chiropractic was. I went to it when I was a kid for a little bit. But then, I annoyed my mom like crazy to continue going. And she eventually said, okay, then don't go. But I was 19 years old. I was playing rugby at Arizona State for the club team. I was in good shape. I worked out a lot. I was already studying nutrition for the last 3-4 years and whatnot. And my mom's a fitness instructor, and yoga instructor. So health to me meant exercise, nutrition, and supplements, because I saw her working out. I saw her taking her juices and juicing and supplementing and all this other stuff. And I saw people who she knew come over and they were in great shape and they did the same thing. So in my head, that's health. 19 years old, that model got challenged where every month I had symptoms coming up. I had canker sores in my mouth every week. I started having acne in my back, which I never had acne before ever. Digestive issues, all this. It was a laundry list of stuff, and it was little at a time. It wasn't like it was just all at once. After about a year, I was getting a little scared, and I said, "Mom, I think I need to go to a medical doctor." And long story short, she's like, "We set up the appointment, but it took like a month to get there." And then last minute, she's like, "Why don't you go see Dr. Frank?" And I'm like, "You think he can help me?" And she's like, "It doesn't hurt." I'm like, "Well, if you can get me in by like tomorrow or something," because I had to wait a whole month just to go to the medical doctor. She's like, "Let me make a call." Got me in the next day. My life was changed. I mean, I went through the evaluation process, got the report of findings, and then all of a sudden I'm looking and I'm like, he's telling me I got to quit rugby because I had scoliosis. And then he had a very intensive plan for me. I like 6 days a week for 2 weeks, 5 days. I mean, it was just, but he's like, "I will get you out of your symptoms will be gone in 2 months before you go back to school." I was like, "Really? You're going to be able to help me with all this, like doing this thing to my neck and this, and you're going to tell me that works?" And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "All right." And he's like, "You need chiropractic care for the rest of your life." I'm like, "Done deal. It's my health. Whatever I have to do." Yeah, symptoms were gone in 2 months. That was interesting. What really puzzled me was, you have to understand, I was playing rugby for Arizona State, so I'm running. I could run a 5-minute mile. I could bench over double my weight. I was able to lift shoulder press over 300 pounds. I mean, from a strength perspective and a physicality perspective and a conditioning perspective, I was in phenomenal shape. But physically, I didn't look like. I didn't have a 6-pack, or I had a 4-pack. But what puzzled me, right? I had a 4-pack. But what puzzled me is this: 4 months into care, I shredded down all the way to 10% body fat. I didn't do anything different. Now, I've always been a natural guy, so I never took anything synthetic or anything my whole entire life.
Sure.
And so for me to shred that fast, I was like, there's something about this. It's got to be the chiropractic. Nothing else changed. And that's what it was like. There's something about this thing called chiropractic I need to learn more about. Decided to move back to Chicago, where I'm originally from, and started to go to business, and I stopped going into computers. And I'm like, I'm going to become a chiropractor. I have no idea what this is, but I'm going to go and do this. And because I felt like people needed to hear this message. There's more people that are worse off than what I was. Then I was like, I want to be able to at least be some sort of beacon of light to help them, to give them hope to make some change. And that was my story that led me to chiropractic and led me through the journey that I have gone through so far.
Wow, I'm sure absolutely everyone would agree that's a beautiful story. I love it. And in regards to, I can imagine education in the States versus in the UK is a lot different. How was the process for you from sort of day one to graduating? How was that for you?
Like, how is the whole, the school process was?
Yeah.
So after first trimester, I went to Parker University when it was like at the peak.
Okay, nice.
And it's when I say that was in 2006, 2009. And I say at the peak of the colleges. I was part of the World Congress of Chiropractic Students at one point. I was the secretary of it. So I got to talk with a lot of students across the world. And a lot of the time they're like, yeah, Parker's one of the top at the time. For me, though, first trimester in, I was very frustrated. I was very upset. And the reason why is because my chiropractor was more on the philosophical side. And I loved it. I was like, I love this philosophy. This is so cool. You're telling me power body heals the body, this and that. I was like, I want to learn that. That's what really pulled me in. We go to chiropractic school, and it's like basically going to medical school, right? We had philosophy, but it was more about like memorizing the wives of D.D. Palmer, the four of them, and all these other things. There was some philosophy. Don't get me wrong. We got the 33 principles of Stevenson's work of the 33 principles of chiropractic and stuff. The textbook on there, I think it's called the chiropractic. Anyhow, but the 33 principles, and that was cool. And I was like, I want to learn more about this stuff. But of course, then we get into trimester 2. Way more medical stuff. And I was just like, this is not for me. Like I could have went back home and stayed in Chicago. Why'd I have to go to Dallas? And thankfully I found a group that was very philosophical based that kept me there. And then it intrigued me because what happened was when I started that process, I knew I wasn't going to learn what D.D. Palmer did. Like for some reason, we don't talk a lot about what he did. We do a little bit, but not like the magnetic healing side and how he evolved from there to do that, right? We don't talk about the metaphysical side of what he teaches because he was very metaphysical about chiropractic. And that is what interests me more. BJ took it to a whole nother level. He expanded it out, but it was scientific. Like he brought, and we needed the science. I'm not saying we didn't, but it's one of the things where I wanted to learn that. And unfortunately, I wasn't going to learn it in school. So I went outside of school and I learned energy healing techniques. I became a Reiki master trainer. And then I started learning about 10 to 12 different energy modalities to learn the deepest part of healing. And what's interesting about that is I learned more about chiropractic and the essence of what we really do there than I did in school.
Wow.
I'm going to school to become a chiropractor. And what I'm really learning is just the sciences and all that, which you do need to have to some degree. But there's like, even with the adjusting, you get 11 weeks to learn a technique and it's like, okay, you're good. You passed. All right, on to the next one. I'm not, this is not bashing. Well, I am a little bit, but that was the education process. But I was always interested, and I was a workshop junkie or webinar junkie. I would go to any workshop, especially if it was free. I was like, I'm going. Like they had workshops on seminar nutrition and stuff like that, and I was like, cool. I'm a student. I'm trying to make things get by. I get a free salad. They give me this little something to eat with it. I'm like, that's great. I go. I got, well, no, they're like, there's leftover salad, Vic. Do you want the rest of it? I'm like, yes, please give me the rest of the salad. I'll eat it. Thank you so much. So it was one of those things where, I did that, so school, I always tell people like chiropractic school is just going to teach you how to pass an exam. I know that's harsh. A lot of people don't like to hear that, but it's kind of the facts. That's what I tell students a lot. I said, to really learn chiropractic, you have to go outside of it to really learn the essence of it. And that was me. I studied 40 to 60 different chiropractors, shadowing their offices. I worked for chiropractors for screenings for their business to help them grow because I wanted to learn all I could about chiropractic while I was there. And even though that was like, some people like, you're spending all this money doing all these workshops. I'm like, I don't care. I want to learn what chiropractic is. I have 3 years here. I want to learn all that I possibly can. And then from there, because you had student discounts, so I took advantage of them. And then from there, when I get an outpatient clinic, I can soar, which I did. And then when I can get out and practice, I can do the same thing. And it all worked out kind of the way I was intentionally doing that. But yeah, I studied a gazillion things. I had some great professors that, like Dr. Michael Hall. He's just a brain in neurology, one of the best we have in our profession. And he was a teacher for almost half the time I was there. He bashed us a lot of times, and a lot of people didn't like him for it. But if you really listen to the guy, he knows his stuff. He's just one of those genius guys that really helped level up my education in that. And plus, the other thing I really liked about through my process is I studied a lot of techniques. I mean, in chiropractic school, we learned 9. And I probably learned another 10 or 11 on top of that while I was there, probably even more, just because I was trying to learn everything I could to understand as much as I could what this whole thing was, chiropractic was all about.
Nice. I love that. It's interesting because a lot of people that I speak to in regards to when they were studying, I guess this is just what the colleges need to do, but they tend to teach you in an allopathic form. Whereas, like you said, obviously chiropractic stems from this very deep philosophy. And I don't think a lot of colleges actually go out of their way to really go into the depths of philosophy. So it's really interesting that you hear that. So stemming from that, once you left chiropractic school, what path did you take? Did you stick with the allopathic, or did you go down a more, I guess, what you deem a vitalistic route?
I was always vitalistic. It's one of those things that unfortunately in our profession, we have become more, I hate to say this, but it is true. We have become so much more allopathic in what we do. And what's sad is the medical world is actually becoming more vitalistic. And it's like, this is so backwards. We should be the ones that are leading the vitalistic approach, but the school systems is what has us do that from the beginning, and even some of people who are great researchers in our profession will say, like, we need only chiropractors teaching in chiropractic schools. We don't need the PhDs unless they understand what we do. They shouldn't be. Because I remember I used to have teachers that would, I remember my physiology teacher. Back then, we did keto diet. So it wasn't called keto diet. It was called the high fat diet. And what it was is you consume 75% of fat, 20% of carbs and 20% of protein and 5%, of carbs. And I told my physiology teacher this, and she's like, that's dangerous. It's not good for your heart, this and this and this. And I was like, hold up. We got lab. At that time we had a lab class that we did. So we can go get our blood work done to evaluate to see, is it, through this diet, is it affecting us? And it did. It actually helped all of us out for the ones who were playing around testing this out. But it's having that like understanding from a vitalistic approach rather than, nope, saturated fats are not that great for you or whatever it may be. The same thing here when it comes to that. So I came out vitalistic immediately right off the bat because I had such a strong background of understanding the philosophy of chiropractic. Understanding what is really chiropractic. When I talk about chiropractic, it's really, we're working with consciousness. That's what D.D. Palmer was talking about. And yet, go ask how many chiropractors are sharing that into the world. It's probably not many at all. I could probably do a handful or two of people that I know. I know one other doc that does this. And I know only a few docs that will talk about that. I mean, they're ones that have taught me this. This is where it helped me understand things more. And it's one of those things where, because what happens is we are trying to prove ourselves to be accepted in many ways, right? We tried in the 80s, we wanted to get into these, in the States, we were trying to get into the insurance companies and try to be accepted from them. And now all these other things that we're trying to do. Instead, stand our own ground, right? Stand our own ground in what we really are. Chiropractic is it is the most powerful, the biggest and largest profession when it comes to health, but we are in our own entity. And this was my background. Of course, I had challenges. I had to learn how to communicate this because I came out talking about this stuff and people look at me like, this is a weird chiropractor. I have back pain. Just take care of my back pain.
Yeah.
So it took me years to cultivate my message, to explain it in a way to where I can share what it means to me and what I understand chiropractic to be. Then at the same time, be able to communicate that properly to the patient so they can understand really what chiropractic is. I can't tell you how many times I had patients in my office who've been under chiropractic care for 5, 10, 15 years. It could have been on and off or continuously. And then they come to me and I share within the first day what I always do with all my patients about what subluxation is and what's the purpose of what I'm doing as a chiropractor. And they'll go, I never, ever heard that ever in my entire life. I never heard it explained that way before. And it's like, yeah, no, because I go, unfortunately, chiropractors today don't get trained that way, maybe, or it's our fault too. So I don't blame our chiropractors mainly, but I'll be like, yeah, it's part of us being chiropractors' fault, but at the same token, it also is the media and how they condition and condition the public to have us see us in a specific way, shape, or form.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can agree more. And in regards to communicating that message, what is the best way about going to that with a patient? Because obviously a lot of patients come to us in pain. They don't necessarily want to hear about the changes that can be made internally or even through innate intelligence or universal intelligence, whichever area you're coming from. How do you communicate that with someone who just wants to get rid of their back pain?
Yeah, the first thing you have to always understand too is like when patients come to us, obviously they're going to come for symptoms, but they're not coming because they're in pain. They're coming to you most of the time, at least, because the pain interferes with something that they enjoy or something that it's interfering with their life. It's interfering with something. And once you see it from that perspective and come from that perspective, then you can really help them. And this is a whole conversion process or retention process because you're addressing their values. And the second thing is I told patients on day one, chiropractic does not treat any condition, illness, symptom, or disease. And they look at me, probably about 70% of the time will look at me and go, you can just see they, especially when they look up, sometimes people look to the right, up to the left, and they're thinking. And I'd be like, you're probably thinking, what the heck am I doing here, right? And they're like, yeah, I am. I said, well, let me explain what chiropractic really is. So we don't treat anything. There's no adjustment that affects, if I adjust your neck, yeah, maybe let's say C3, right? That may affect your sinuses, may help with drainage. Maybe C2 helps with that a little bit, right? But there's a plethora of other things that it's going to play with too. Like how, making one adjustment regulates the autonomic nervous system. There's so many things that it's not one way. So I was like, here's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be looking at things from a whole perspective. I'm going to be raising everything up, all the systems together through the nervous system, through the adjustments. From that, addressing and focusing there, helping with the brain, then, and only then, there's going to come a point, and I don't know when this is going to happen, but there's going to come a point that the symptoms will start to reside on their own. And we'll get to that point. But notice I am not focusing on where your symptoms are. I'm not paying, because you have a shoulder issue, I'm not putting all my energy there. I'm going to focus on the whole system and improve the whole system. And from that, those symptoms and conditions or whatever you have going on will slowly reside. Now, if they had like a chronic illness or something along those lines, I will tell them chiropractic may help and clear that out. But most of the time, it's a holistic approach, which means we may have to look at other things to help, like nutrition, emotional stuff, mindfulness. This is the kind of things I did in my office. And I'd be like, and then we'll know if we need to bring that into the equation also. And I'd be like, how does that sound to you? And they'll be like, oh my God, I love that. That's like, they're like, you're very thorough. I like the well-rounded approach. And I'm like, well, let's go ahead and let's, go through the exam process and do that. So it's understanding, again, it's just vitalistic, right? Instead of looking at the parts, we're looking at the whole. Chiropractic raises the whole system up. And eventually there's going to come that point. And no one knows when. I love being, if you asked me when I first came out of school, I hated saying I don't know. 10 years in, I love saying I don't know. Like I tell them, like, when is my pain going to go away? I have no idea. They're like, really? You don't have no, and no doctor can. And if they tell you it's going to be, I can give you ballparks. Like, oh yeah, if you have this going on, I've seen you everything. Yeah, it might take a couple of weeks to a month. Yeah, that's a ballpark. But do I know 100% with certainty? Absolutely not. And no doc does. So, and my patients kind of appreciated that because they knew that I would be 100% transparent with them. Like, I can't tell you when it's going to happen, but what I do know is this. This is how, if you say I don't know when it's going to happen, that kind of deflates them.
Yeah.
But then I would turn it around with hope and say, but here's one thing I do know. As long as we keep doing this work, we will get there. I've never seen a patient not get there. I mean, there was a couple, out of my career, but I was like, most of the time we'll get there in some way, shape, or form. And we'll have to maybe change course, correct, or whatever, but know that I'm here to help support you. And I'm the guy who's going to be sitting here monitoring everything to make sure we're moving the way we need to go. And if something comes up, we'll address it at that time. How does that sound to you? And they'll be like, that sounds great. And then and what I'm doing now is psychologically, they're like, I feel like I'm in the right office. And that's the goal of what I'm trying to get them to.
That's amazing. That's got me really fired up. That's great. I love that so much. And it's just an interesting perspective in how to manage patient expectations as well. I think that's really hit the nail on the head there, which is great. And obviously, as well as being a chiropractor, you're also a coach as well. How did you? Sorry, go.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, how did you go from just the chiropractic and then transitioning into the coaching aspect as well?
Yeah. So first 5 years of my career, you can tell I'm a little ambitious. So I even had a coach before I got out of chiropractic school, just that's how I wanted to succeed. I came from a family of blue collar, not, paycheck to paycheck, no abundance of money whatsoever. It was always scarcity. And it wasn't just my growing up. I saw it around my community and so forth too. And so I was like, I don't want this life. I had a great way of seeing what I didn't want. So I was like, who and what can I do to give me the best chances of being successful? So I studied the best of the best chiropractors I can get access to, whether they're books, whether they're seminars, workshops, or actually talking to them and shadowing them. Like I said, I shadowed 40 to 60 different chiropractors roughly. I should actually go back and see exactly how many there were, but I shadowed a ton and they were all successful. They were very successful offices. And I wanted to, so I did that. Then I went outside the chiropractic profession and started studying what was the best business advice that was being out there, what's the best books to read and so forth. So I was cultivating all this to where I was reading up to 80 or 120 books a year. I was not listening to any music. I was listening to podcasts, watching videos, self-help, personal development, listening to stuff as I worked, nonstop. Like they were always saying, right? Grind, hustle, you got to put the sweat equity in, the sacrifice. I was doing all that. worked long days. I get home from a day, I go be with my girlfriend. I have, at the time, she's my wife now, but I would have dinner with her. And then all of a sudden I'd be like, hey, we can watch a show for like a half hour if you want. But then even if that, I got to get back to work. And I go back to researching and cultivating new things. 5 years in, I hit my financial peak, which was great. But I was burned out every 4 to 6 months along the way. I was unsatisfied, unfulfilled. And I really thought about leaving the profession at that time, because it was like, I always felt I was going uphill battle. Like if I just took my foot off the throttle just for a second, everything would change in my office, and not in a good way. And I was like, this is not how it's meant to be. Like, I don't know what happened here. And what I started to realize is I was actually being a byproduct of the people I was studying. I was a prototype to them. And I wasn't being myself. Also, I wasn't sharing chiropractic in the fullest, like running my office the way I wanted to. I had a coach at the time who was like, meet people where they are. Like, they're not going to want health like you want health. So just meet them where they are. And that sometimes meant changing care plans for that. So, and don't get me wrong, it was great business advice. It got me to the numbers. But for me, the money's not everything. I wanted to make impact. That was one of the biggest reasons. As you know my story, I was like, man, people need to know about chiropractic. I wanted to make an impact. So long story short, I started to say, the heck with everything that I've been told. I want to change my office around. I shifted to focus more family wellness, but I also started to be very strict on my care, to where a point where, because I thought about this for a second, because a lot of people say, well, don't be the doc that does the my way or the highway kind of thing. And I was like, hold up here. If you go to a master in martial arts, a master, 10th degree black belt in some, whatever martial art you want, let's say Kung Fu, and you go to the sensei, the master, and you say, hey, I want to be where you are. What do I have to do? And who do I have to become to get to that level? He's going to tell you, this is what you're going to do. 5 days a week, you're going to do this. I want you to focus here, blah, 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 whatever it is. And you go, I just can't. My schedule doesn't allow me to do that. X, Y, Z. How about if I did like 2 or 3? It's still doing something, right? It should work. Is he going to, or he or she, is they going to accept you into their dojo?
No, not at all.
No, they're going to say, see you later. This is what I know to get to this point for you. Right. And unfortunately in chiropractic, it's like, it's kind of sometimes frowned upon to be that way. And I was like, you know what? I need to do that, because I use scan technology and all this stuff. And I started to notice that like there was a certain percentage of patients where they would do really well. And then 6 months, 8 months down the road, some of their old subluxation patterns will come back. And sometimes that can happen with stress short-term stress over a period of time. I get that. But it was a little interesting, because then symptoms showed back up and other stuff. And I was just like, and I had other, like I had to use heart rate variability, and that will tell me if like they're experiencing some 2 to 3 months of stress. It would start to change that. And it wasn't changing. And I was like, there's something else going on here. And so I made a drastic change in my practice. We focused more to pediatrics. I took a 40% hit on purpose. A lot of times people say, what the heck, why would you do that? Well, we did it because, again, fulfillment is what's the biggest thing I seek. And so we took a 40% hit on our practice over 6 months, which meant what we were doing is patients that didn't align to what we were changing towards, we would tell them, we want you to increase your care, we want to get more focused on where you are. If not, then, we can refer you to somebody who'll be a little more lenient. And, they understood, like patients appreciated that. They're like, I appreciate you being really honest and how you're changing things. Unfortunately, that's not going to work for me. And I said, that's totally fine. If anything ever changes, we're here to help. But let me give you at least 3 referrals that you can go to that can help you. And I remember I get phone calls from a couple of chiropractors like, what are you doing dumping all these patients over to us? What's happening here? Are you going out of business? Yeah. I'm like, no, I'm definitely not going out of business. I'm still around. But long story short, through that journey, through that process, I took a lot of the stuff I knew already, which was I studied energy healing. In that process, I learned things about the quantum physics and how consciousness plays a role in our physical realm. I learned about a lot of things with like universal laws. And then, of course, being a chiropractor, we're brain docs. We know a lot of the neuroscience. All I did was go back and look at behavioral neurology. And I'm like, oh, that's that brain center. What that does. And it was just so easy to pick it up because I already knew how the brain, the centers of the brain. And so I started pulling this all together, and I understood things on limited beliefs and subconscious mind and how our mind gets conditioned and neural development, all these things. And I said, you know what? If I'm truly the creator of my life, I should define what success means. And from that moment, I literally said, success is going to be effortless. I don't have to think about worrying about getting new patients or trying to keep the business up and running. It's all going to work the way it needs to. I'm going to shift my focus on my beingness rather than my doing. Because I was like 90% doing, 10% being, and all of a sudden I flipped the script and did 90% being and 10% doing. And what ended up happening was, in a little over a year, we went back to our financial peak. Not only that, I worked 50% less than what I was doing. And towards the last couple of years of my practice, I was working 14 and a half hours a week. making what I made at my financial peak, working 28 to 29 hours a week. And on top of that, we shifted to pediatrics. At the time, my pediatric patient volume was only 5%. So that means the total, if you added all my patients up, 5% of that was pediatrics, age 0 to 17. In 6 months, we went to 48%. No marketing, no campaigns, no anything. All I did was I had a vision and I focused on it. I had a beingness, my energy of what I wanted to experience in my office, how I wanted to feel. And I just knew in my mind that we were going to grow this pediatric office. And it was interesting because having the normal conversations I was having, but I was coming from a different energy place. All of a sudden, a mom who's been in my office for like a year goes, "Hey, little Timmy here has, he's been having this, issues with sinuses and it's chronic. I'm just getting kind of like exhausted. I've been going to all these specialists. Is there any way you think chiropractic can help?" Yeah, absolutely. I have to scan. Absolutely. I have to look, check, and see what's going on and how severe or what's going. I want to. Of course, I know chiropractic can help, but at the same token, I want to be like, yes, but we also have to check to make sure to see if I can and what's the work that's going to be needed. And they'd be like, "Yeah, can I get an appointment set up?" "Yeah, great. Just go see the front desk and they'll get that situated. I'll walk her up to, hey, this is so and so wants to get it so and so in," and it just started to happen that way. And so this is the element. And when I figured this out, and I was like, man, this is really working for me. I was like, man, business owners need to know this. So I didn't go to chiropractors at first. I was like, business owners need to know this. Because I talked to a lot of entrepreneurs. I knew a lot of entrepreneurs, and they're all burned out and exhausted and the same things that I went through. And so I started to do, it was 2018. And I was like, I started a podcast, I wrote my first book. And then about 6 months later, I was like, I really want to get into this coaching thing. I want to do it part-time. I really want to help entrepreneurs to focus on their mind, but more importantly, how to achieve success more effortlessly without this whole doing thing. And it blew up. I started doing group coaching right off the bat. It went great. And that was my journey for about 3 years. And then eventually my wife and I moved from Chicago in the suburbs area there to Knoxville, Tennessee. And in that transition, unfortunately we let our office go. It wasn't that we weren't successful. We were very, very successful. It's just we couldn't sell it. It was just during COVID and everything. It was just last year. We had it up for sale for a year and a half, and we had like one person possibly interested. But it was one of those things where COVID climate in Illinois, like the guy who was selling my office is like, if I can get you in Tennessee, Florida, if your practice was in Texas, Florida, or Tennessee, it would have been sold within the first couple months. He's like, but unfortunately right now, the where you're located, it's gonna be really hard. And there comes a point in life where, is it money that you're going to hold on to, or is it going to be fulfillment in what we wanted? My wife and I wanted to start a family. We were tired of waiting. And so we just said, fine, we'll just let it go. We had a great practice. I had a friend who practiced about 5 minutes away from my office. And I said, I'm going to refer, I got a great chiropractor I can refer to. And we made that transition. And this year is the first year I started getting into coaching. October was last year was the first time I actually started to focus more on chiropractic. Not this year, October, 2021, where I had a client tell me, "You've helped me out so much in so many areas of my life." She goes, "Do you work with chiropractors?" And I was like, "It's interesting you're saying that." I go, "Actually, I have a one or two, but I don't put a lot of focus into it. I just do business owners, and chiropractors get open to that." And she's like, "You know the industry better than anyone. Why aren't you coaching chiropractors?" And I looked and I go, I don't know why I don't know why I didn't think of that. I was like, you know what? I need to open that up a little more and try to help out my profession a little bit more. And I felt bad. I was like, man, I feel bad I didn't do that. And she's like, no, it's just you've because she was in she's a real estate agent. And she's like, but she goes, you knew so much, because my wife's a real estate agent, so I know a lot about real estate. But she was like, but you were able to help me in so many ways. She goes, I can only imagine what you can do for a chiropractor. And I was like, you know what? I got to really start to, and it's amazing because this year, all the chiropractors I've been working with, they all broke records in their practice. And it's like, it comes back again to mindset. It comes back to, it comes back to, again, the principles of what I share and those concepts. And I've been through it. The thing about coaching in this day and age is that, and this happens because I'm a mindset coach and a business coach. It's a lot of watered down now because of COVID. Everyone became coaches. You're going to start to see the coach industry is going to start to take a huge tank because because it's been so watered down. I've walked through the experiences of what I teach. I've been through it. I know what it's like to, when I first started my career, where I don't know if I'm going to keep my doors open the next week because of financially, I don't have it right now. I don't know where it's going to come from. And then all of a sudden, how the Hail Mary pass works out. And, I have funds now within a week, not loans or anything, patients paid up front to where it covered me for 4 or 6 months of my business expenses. So I know how that feels, and I understand those principles, and I've been through it. I've walked through it, and I never walked through everything. I don't know everything, and I'm very, very straightforward to say when I know something and when I don't. But at the same token, that's what inspired me to be a coach in that realm to make the change. And now I'm on fire this year, and especially next year, I'm looking forward to it, to open up more, to help the profession as much as I can, to get out of this conditioning of what we're supposed to do. As first of all, be great chiropractors, which is very easy to do, but to be a business owner or be an entrepreneur as a chiropractor is what we don't know well to do. And it's there's no training in this. You can go to the best in school, they don't teach you that. Parker, at the time when I went there, was considered like the business school. I had a business background, and I had a bachelor in business. And when we went through the business, I was like, this is what business is for them. I'm like, this is not business. I'm like, this is so not business. I'm understanding the business of chiropractic, like insuring codes, when to charge this, your parameters, all this stuff. But I was like, this doesn't help you grow the business. How do you market? How do you do this? How do you do, like, how do you save on taxes? How do you, I was like, with that, we didn't learn any of that. So anyway, I digress.
I mean, like you're saying, you've done a lot of shadowing. You said shadowing anywhere between 40, 60 other chiropractors. You went and saw, you went to free seminars and just other webinars and everything else. For someone that's in a position who's probably like myself, that's in their like first year of practice or like even leaving school, what would be the main areas that you would send people to in regards to information?
The first thing you want to do is you got to have a vision on what you want to do in your practice. Like why does your practice exist? You want to get into a practice and you want to run your own practice. Why does that practice exist? What is the vision that you have for it? What is it going to solve? What are you standing for? Right. A lot of times chiropractors don't realize that, and maybe they do, maybe they don't, but is that when you run your own business, you got to have that what is the change that you want to be? But also remember, you are also representing and sharing chiropractic to your community the way you've interpreted it or the way you want to share it. And so there's two things here, because it's not like just business. When I work with business owners, it's just, what's your vision for your business? It's simple and easy. Why do you want to have a business? Why do you want to do that, and so forth? Chiropractic's a little different, because you got to have the why for the business, but then you also have to, why do you share chiropractic the way you do? What's your vision of chiropractic, right? And start seeing it from that perspective. That, I think, is the most critical thing that you need to do. A lot of times we get caught up, what's the systems I need to know? What do I need to do this? Don't get me wrong, systems are important. But if you have a vision, then the systems come in place. Like for me, when we shifted gears to be pediatric, I had a vision of what I wanted to see in a year. Literally, when I made the change, it was January 2017. We're like making the initial change. Like, okay, we're going pediatrics. That's it. We made the choice. In my head, I saw me interacting with kids, having fun, joking, laughing. I saw moms in my waiting room area, all hanging out, choosing appointments, when to come, then coming there, and then going to the parks nearby, hanging out with their kids. I mean, I visualized all this. And then the vision of, why is it important? Why is this? Why do I, what do I see for the aspects of pediatric health in my community, and seeing moms becoming de-stressed, seeing families having more time to enjoy themselves, right? And it's amazing, because a year later, it's almost like I handwritten all that, and it happened. A year later, I remember there was 3 moms that were coming. My wife ran the office, and she'd be like, hey, I saw the moms like sitting out there, and I was like, what's going on? They're like, they're just hanging out. They're going to go to a park afterwards together. And I was like, you remember that? And she goes, I know you, we'll talk later. And I was like, cool. And then, or I remember a dad came in, he came in. I remember he was crawling in because his back was out. And then eventually he referred his younger daughter, and then he referred his older daughter, and it was a family event where they all came. And I never forget the day. It was 6 months later. He comes in, and he was just like, he came back from vacation, and he sat there, and he's like, man, I got to tell you. And he's not an emotional guy. He wouldn't show emotions, but he was like, I just want to thank you from my family to the bottom of our heart. His wife was there, and she wasn't a patient at the time yet. And she's just like, we want to thank you. You're the doctor that gave us a life back. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, we went on vacation for the first time in 3 years, because our daughter, remember the episode she would have, the emotional breakdowns? We just couldn't go anywhere anymore. I was like, yeah. She goes, we were able to go on vacation for a whole week, not one episode. Wow. Again, that was my vision over a year ago. So you have to have a vision and clarity of what it is, and what does it feel like to have, like when you're in the office and so forth, because from there, the systems fall in place, because then you'll know what you have to do, right? Do I have to have a shockwave therapy? Well, if I'm focusing on pediatrics, don't need that. Do I need to have this? Well, if you're going to be focusing here, don't need that. So it kind of, when you tailor the vision, everything falls in alignment with that. And in business in general, we're chiropractors. We know alignment better than anything. If a spine's in alignment, the body works more at ease. We know that's we all understand that. The same thing happens with your mind. If you have your vision, it's set, and you have the alignment of your actions and align with the vision, and your energy and focus is all there, man, everything works a lot easier. How was I able to get that growth without doing anything? Again, it's alignment. And it's coming back to that principle and understanding that. So that is for anyone who's starting out. If you're a student, get vision first. Hire a coach is the second thing. Don't do this on your own. Unless you want to figure it all out on your own, that is perfectly fine. I'm not saying this because I'm a coach. I'm not that type of guy. But I have a track record that I've had a coach 6 months before I graduated chiropractic school, and I've had a coach since then. I'm now 13 years out of chiropractic school, and I still had a coach every moment of the time. Eventually, I'm going to start adding coaches. I have a coach for nutrition. I know nutrition. I've done 22 years in nutrition now. My best friend is my nutrition coach. Why? Because he knows nutrition just as well as I do. And I'll give him my advice of what I think I should do. And I say, but you're my doc. You tell me what I do. My chiropractor. I know chiropractic very well. Guess what? My chiropractor is my chiropractic coach. I go to him and say, hey, doc, I got this thing going on with my knee. Just last week, I was asking him this. I'm like, my knee's been a little funky, doc. I need you to, what do you think I should do? Can you take a look at it? Let me know what you think. I already knew what it was, but that's not my role. My role is he's my coach. He told me the exercises I need to do to stabilize it. He goes, yeah, you don't have any. He goes, he goes, it's just the fascial stuff. And he's like, do this, 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 and this. You should be good. Done deal, doc. I've already done it 4 times this week. My knee is back to almost normal already. So I get a coach. Reason why a coach is going to help you speed up the process to get there faster, which is awesome. It's worth every penny for that. And then the second thing is they're going to help you then also, cultivate your message more and so forth and what you want to achieve. So make sure you have the right coach when it comes to that. Those are the 2 things that I think is the most. Yes, business strategy is important. There are systems you have to have in place. There are things that come with that. But again, it comes back down to what kind of office you want to have and how you want to serve chiropractic. Because once you get clear with there, the systems will come in, right? And I can go down more with this, but I think those are pretty 2 solid ones that would help massively.
Yeah, that is some absolute solid advice. So thank you. I'm sure I've got no doubt everyone will appreciate that information. So, and I could literally spend the rest of the day speaking to you quite easily, but unfortunately we are running out of time. So before we do end the call, if people want to get hold of you, where can they reach out to you? What's the best way of contacting you?
Yeah. So my website's my main hub. For chiropractors, I have a website called The Mindful Chiropractor. That is also my podcast that I do specifically for chiropractors. I do have another podcast called The Mindful Experiment. That is my main one I've been doing for over almost 5 years now. It's top 1% globally. It's got over 430 something episodes. And I tailor to that. But the Mindful Experiment is where it is. I do have a Facebook group and a LinkedIn group that I share quite often information and just mindset principles, some interviews I've done that's going to help relating to that. You can find that out. I have it on the Mindful Experiment. If you go to my website, go all the way to the bottom, you'll see the free Facebook group there. LinkedIn has it too. It's called the Prosperous Chiropractor Club. And then if things resonated with you, what I'm talking about, and I do what's called a free breakthrough call. So those who are seriously interested in leveling up, or they have something they have a struggle that they've been trying to work towards and break through. I do a free 30-minute call to connect, get to know about you. The most biggest thing for me is just knowing if I can help you. Because if I know I can help you in that process, then I will definitely share my coaching process, what I do and how I help.